2015 has been a pretty good year for video games. Of course, any year would be pretty decent if it followed 2014's abysmal offerings. I'm going to count down my top 5 games of 2015, as well as my biggest disappointment of the year. On with the show. Pillars of Eternity is one of the most well-done modern adaptations of an old game style that has been done to date. The crew who gave us such amazing stories as Fallout New Vegas, Knights of the Old Republic 2, and many of them under their former title of Black Isle Studios gave us Fallout 2, Planescape Torment, and Icewind Dale. Pillars takes the player through gorgeous backdrops, and while it has a very simple graphical design compared to other modern games, is both compelling and extremely intricate in its combat and other game world interactions. It can be a bit difficult to get into for people who aren't old enough to remember when this kind of game was revolutionary, but for those not on a nostalgia trip, in Pillars you will find a great narrative and a world in which to have an adventure. I know that some people will question this edition, but as someone who games primarily on PC, GTA was a major release for us this year. Rockstar did a great PC port of the previous console exclusive game, which is chock full of stuff to do, some of it amazing, and other pieces not so much. As is always incredible for GTA games, moving around the world is a blast. Grabbing a random passing car or going out of your way to find a more unique vehicle is always a treat. But what really stole the show for me was the characters. Michael, the well-to-do government-protected bank robber with serious marital problems and white trash spoiled kids, Franklin, the ex-gangster looking for a bit more, and most of all, Trevor. The funny thing about Trevor is that removing the killer bit, I know a guy that's actually a hell of a lot like him, which made some of the parts of the game even more hilarious than they should have been. I think if I had to pick a favorite, Trevor would be it. Amazing voice acting, a short but fun plot, wide open world that looks great on PC and has plenty to do. It's quite simply a great game, nothing more needs to be said. I've been a Blizzard fan for a long time. I cut my teeth on StarCraft and Brood War, and while I was never a competitive player, they've always had a special spot on my computer. StarCraft 2 was no different, though I must admit I was always a bit disappointed in how the plot turned from a political invasion intrigue story to a redemption-centric love story. Legacy of the Void goes in a very different direction, and while there is still the need to square away the Kerrigan connection, the bulk of Legacy in dealing with the Protoss goes back to form. The game is absolutely full of awesome in-game cinematics, some that are action-heavy and others that are just really heavy in conversations between Protoss characters. Artanis is a bold leader who, if a bit naive in his desire for everyone to work together, certainly feels like the kind of Protoss that the entire populace could get behind, look to for inspiration and that drive to succeed. And the evil that is Amon, introduced prior to Legacy, really starts to take shape. The best part of it, in my opinion, is that he is clearly not a redemption story, similar to evils like Sauron, with that pure essence of evil kind of stature. I've had about enough of antagonists that have to be given some kind of relatable element. The new units are fun, and I always enjoy watching a bit of the esports scene now and then. The changes to focus on army-to-army micro-battles simply make it more fun to watch, specifically turning things like Chrono Boost into a passive rather than having to actively go back and keep it up, leave more time to focus on tactics, and for viewers, that's great. If you played and enjoyed any StarCraft game, you will enjoy Legacy of the Void. It's as simple as that. Bloodborne takes the standard stylings of the Dark Souls series and spins them into a new and even darker world. It's hard to imagine after playing Dark Souls that a game could come out that's even darker, but they managed it. On the combat side of things, the big innovation here over Souls was in the entire removal of the shield blocking mechanic and replacing it with dodging. That simple little change, along with regenerating some lost health when attacking within a short time of getting hit, takes a lot of the slow gameplay out and replaces it with action, something that I appreciate quite a bit. The fights can be frustrating at times, with some long runs when you've died, but much like Dark Souls, the areas loop back on themselves with reasonably frequent secret path unlocks to let you navigate levels quicker. The long loading times do suck, as does platform exclusivity on the PS4, but some concessions need to be made as it was Sony that bankrolled the game in the first place. The world design shifts dramatically throughout the game, and it starts dark, so you can imagine how crazy and weird things get further on down the line. There's clearly a Lovecraft influence here, as many have said before me, but the beauty of the way things progressively get worse give a real personal impression of the sanity of your character, all without a sanity bar or any obvious writing telling the player that they're going crazy. Bloodborne is a blast. Those who have been around the channel for a while will have known even before me showing it that The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt was going to be my game of the year. It is by a significant margin better than any other offering in 2015, and is actually the kind of game that dethrones other titles from the games that I would consider the best of all time. The attention to detail displayed by CD Projekt Red in the believability and immersion of the world is absolutely stellar. Side quests actually feel well written and in many cases important not only to the world, but the development of Geralt as a character. The world itself is graphically amazing, sound design and voice acting well above par. I found myself more than once just stopping while riding Roach around the world to gawk in wonder as a storm would roll in and start blowing the trees around as the whole mood in the countryside changed from pleasant to horrific. It's also worth talking about the general business practices, which while I don't like that we have to celebrate how businesses in the game industry should operate from a consumer perspective, given the current landscape of development, CD Projekt Red stands out as a consumer-friendly example. Some got quickly tired of the frequent free DLC announcements for Witcher 3, as many of them were small in nature, but to me, that is preferable over constant announcements of paid DLC. The avoidance of DRM, the amazing level of non-filler content that was provided, and the fair prices for expansion material all coalesce into a product and a company that the industry should look up to. One of the major reasons why they were able to pull off a game of this scope is by having a known protagonist, but if that's all it took, many other games would have done just as well. There is real care, attention, and dare I say love from the developers for the game world that they have crafted, and they have every right to be proud of this game and their place in developing a genuine piece of history that is now and will in future be a benchmark for what a great game needs to be. I do want to put in an honorable mention, however, which unfortunately is both a good game, but also the year's biggest disappointment for me. Fallout 4 struck me right from the get-go as a game that I had played before. It has all of the hallmarks of Bethesda the RPG, with a heavy plot that has so many illogical distractions. But more than that, it just didn't add enough exceptional content to make me want to keep coming back. The base building is the biggest new feature, but with a clunky interface, I just couldn't get into it. Dialogue is uninspired and doesn't actually change in most cases no matter what you choose. Reputation is irrelevant. Essentially, what I was hoping was going to be an amazing step up from Fallout 3 was instead a side grade. As an expansion to Fallout 3, it would be great, but as a sequel, it failed to live up to my expectations. So hey, that's my list of the top 5 games of 2015. Hell of a lot better than the 2014 list that I didn't actually get around to making, and I look forward to seeing what comes out next year. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Cheers.